Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Anthony Kraus, and on behalf of OTC Markets, as well as our co-host Zach Small Cap Research, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Avicanna Inc. Their session will be moderated by Brad Sorensen, CFA, Senior Equity Research Analyst with Zach Small Cap Research. Please note, you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Aras Azadian, Chief Executive Officer of Avicanna Inc., which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol AVCNF and on the TSX under the symbol AVCN. Welcome, Aras and Brad.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, folks, for joining us today. I'll start off with a brief introduction of Avicanna. We'll spend about 10 minutes or so doing so, and I'll be joined by Brad in more of a fireside chat where I think we'll be able to cover some of a more dynamic conversation. And then at the end, as Anthony mentioned, we'll save a couple of minutes for Q&A from the audience. So by way of introduction, I'm the founding CEO. Actually started the company in 2015, really. We started off as a biopharmaceutical company. We often get sort of mislabeled as a cannabis company, and I just want to clarify, we are not a cannabis company. We are a biopharmaceutical company focused on cannabinoid-based medicine. Started the journey 2015-16 with initially a couple of drug candidates that we wanted to take through pharmaceutical development. We're part of a Johnson & Johnson incubator, which then led us to building an extensive relationship with the medical and academic community here in Canada. It's very important that we do this work in Canada because Canada is the first G7 country that has legalized cannabis or cannabinoid-based products, which really has permitted us to do all types of research, clinical development, drug development. And we've gone through about 9 years of R&D, clinical and commercialization that has led to the company reaching where we are today, which is really a pharmaceutical company that is in commercial stage, actually in scale-up stage. We have 4 business pillars, which I will expand on. We have about 30 commercial products that are in various international markets. We've obtained our first pharmaceutical approval, which is for a pediatric epilepsy indication. And the drug is called Trunerox. And we're addressing really a global market opportunity. So we're not addressing a cannabis opportunity, but more of a global medical opportunity with emphasis on pain, oncology, neurology. From a financial perspective, we've had some major milestones, and we do believe we're at a significant inflection point. The company recorded its first EBITDA positive quarter, Q1 2024, so last quarter, where we demonstrated about 450% growth year over year. Last year to this year, we demonstrated about 300% growth year over year and had actually record revenues as well. So we're in a very good growth stage, I would say, at this stage, and this is really credit to the scientific platform of the company that is owned and developed by the company. Today, we operate in 4 business pillars. RHO is our medical brand. This is really medical cannabis formulations that are designed using advanced drug delivery systems and are backed by evidence to provide really the medical community with the toolkit, with a number of different products that they can then prescribe for their patients. We have a medical platform, which is really an online pharmacy and patient support program called mymedi.ca. This is now commercial in Canada. And this is providing tens of thousands of patients with complete access to medical cannabis, insurance coverage, patient support, and clinical education. We have our pharmaceutical pipeline, which already has 1 indication-specific drug that's been approved that is now in commercialization stage. And then we have our Aureus division, which is really part of our supply chain that is actually providing the active ingredients that goes into the other business units. RHO quickly, again, our non-indication specific medical cannabis products. So these are various drug delivery formats, all of which are non-inhalation. So these are proprietary, patent pending or patent approved formulations that are utilizing cannabinoids to provide a targeted drug delivery of whether it's CBD, THC, or CBN. And we're able to provide these formulations to the medical community and to patients in an accessible format. The medical community, predominantly physicians and nurse practitioners, are then prescribing these particular products for specific patients and specific clinical indications. We believe RHO is the most advanced medical cannabis brand today in the world, given that it's coming with, again, advanced drug delivery systems, but also it's an evidence-based approach. given that we're able to do such research here in Canada. These products are available across several medical cannabis channels here in Canada, also international, and are also available across retail channels through some of the provincial boards here in Canada, including Ontario, Alberta, and some of the other smaller provinces. A big part of our story was a recent acquisition that we completed last year of medical cannabis by Shoppers. For those of you that don't know, Shoppers Drug Mart is the largest pharmacy chain here in Canada. It's sort of equivalent to the Walgreens or CVS. They had a medical cannabis division that was very well established and built, and it was an established leader within the Canadian market, specifically working with the largest insurance providers. We've transitioned and taken over this division. We've successfully provided continuation of care to the patients of this division. And now this has been relabeled as MyMedi. MyMedi is working today with the largest private and public insurance providers and is providing complete medical cannabis care to patients, including a diverse portfolio of formulations and products from various companies, including Avicanna's own RHO, pharmacist-led bilingual patient support programs, and a number of different specialty care programs, as I mentioned, insurance, but also Veterans Affairs. So this has been a very successful incorporation of RHO and MyMedi to provide an even more complete medical cannabis platform. We believe as more and more markets internationally, specifically in the United States, legalize medical cannabis at a federal level, we'll be able to transition and move into the market, providing this complete package. A big part of medical affairs and what we do at MyMedi is obviously education and training. So we have established a number of courses and assets for physicians to be able to incorporate the medical community into the process. We strongly believe that a patient that can benefit from medical cannabis from a formulation or product perspective should be going through their physician. From a pharmaceutical perspective, we really focus on a number of different clinical indications. Major ones are being neurology in terms of epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, but of course, areas such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, and specifically to our veteran population, pain management. And then we actually look at dermatology indications, specifically EB and eczema. And we have a number of pharmaceutical candidates and or approved products that are in various stages. I'll touch on Trunerox, which is our epilepsy drug, but we also do have other formulations that have now gone through preclinical development, in some cases, observational human studies. And what's really amazing here is our ability to combine our medical cannabis platform with our pharmaceutical pipeline. So we're really learning from our medical cannabis platform and from the revenues being generated from the studies that are being conducted. What are the top indications that could benefit from specific Avicanna formulations? Those winners are then selected and put into various clinical protocols that will go through the pharmaceutical development pathway, which will also include the FDA in our mid to long-term plans. Recently, we completed two very exciting studies. One was on a rare skin condition called epidermolysis bullosa, the Hospital of Sick Children here in Toronto. Also, we finished another study with a different topical candidate, which was designed for MSK and pain, so local inflammatory pain, which had very good signals. So these are just some of the examples of how our pharmaceutical pipeline is going through early stage clinical development as well. Our first drug is called Trunerox. So Trunerox was approved by INVIMA, which is the regulatory authorities of Colombia. This product will then go through commercialization in Colombia initially, and then we expect to be able to expand it into other South American, Central American markets. This is approved for catastrophic pediatric epilepsy cases, including Lennox-Gastaut syndrome and Dravet syndrome. And we believe that there's a mass market opportunity for this. And because we are producing this formulation using our own active pharmaceutical ingredients that are manufactured in Colombia, we believe that we can price Trunerox at an affordable, accessible format in these developing markets where affordability and accessibility is quite important. So this actually marks our first indication-specific pharmaceutical, which we believe is going to provide significant opportunity, but is not going to be the last one, as we also expect to expand this into other markets and look to expand into the rest of our pipeline. Quickly on our raw material division, so we do produce our own CBD, CBG, and THC. We are working on other rare cannabinoids as well, but the purpose of this was really to ensure that in addition to having these pharmaceutical formulations for both medical and pharma purposes, that we can actually control the supply chain. Often being categorized as a cannabis company has been a challenge for us, but also relying on cannabis companies for our active ingredients would have been problematic. Therefore, we've established what is one of the most, I would say, sustainable cultivation projects in the world. We are already organic certified from the USDA. We've been able to produce over the last 7 years industrial scale CBD, CBG, and THC in terms of an active pharmaceutical format. We've been able to export that into 17 countries. And so far, there's 3 pharmaceutical approvals that have been obtained internationally, one of which is ours, that is using these API. So really what would have been really a supply chain business unit has now become its own profit center and has become a source of active pharmaceutical ingredients for us and our international pharmaceutical partners as well. We are very well positioned internationally. As I mentioned earlier, we're not addressing a cannabis opportunity, we're addressing a medical and pharmaceutical opportunity at a global level. And the International Convention on Narcotics does allow medical and pharmaceutical products to be exported, where it doesn't for recreational. So we do look at the market as a global opportunity, and we're also looking to establish further in more markets. But as of now, we've completed transactions in about 20 countries, which is really just a foothold into getting into more countries, but also expanding the market opportunity in those countries. I'll quickly go through the scientific platform just because I want to obviously leave time for the conversation with Brad, but we are scientific leaders, I believe, in the industry. We control and own all of the intellectual property. Everything's been developed in-house. A lot of it has been developed through grants from the Canadian government where we're conducting this research. We do work with the leaders. We work with the top medical and academic institutions. We recently hosted a very successful symposium that we will be broadcasting with some of these thought leaders. And we've really had the opportunity and the luxury to be able to work with these key opinion leaders in terms of establishing really the forefront of medical cannabis and pharmaceutical cannabinoid potential. From a financial perspective, 2023 was a big year for us. We had about 300% growth. We went from 4 million to about 17 million Canadian. We're on track to reach about 30 million or so from our current run rate in Canada. So we're continuing to grow at this rapid rate. As I mentioned earlier, Q1 was a record revenue for us and our first EBITDA positive, which is really exciting because we're able to deliver, what is a sustainable business from our medical cannabis side while we continue to develop our long-term pharmaceutical international business model. A major factor here to highlight is the fact that we're operating at about a 50% consolidated margin today at this early scale, which is a signal to the entry barriers and the proprietary nature of our products. So very exciting phase. We're on the TSX senior board. We did an IPO. We're on the junior exchange in terms of the OTCQX in the United States. We do ultimately plan to get onto more senior exchange in the United States as well. And we believe that the U.S. audience is the right audience for the type of biopharma company that Avicanna is today. I'll pause there. I'd love to get Brad on so we can have more of the fireside chat. But thanks for your time, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. That was a lot, and we probably have a lot to talk about. So looking forward to it. Vast, but I'm going to go way back to the beginning because you said that the U.S. is a target market, great investors, and I agree. American investors would be very interested in this company, but there's also a big issue in America, which you also talked about, that legalized marijuana, medical marijuana, people conflate that with cannabis, and it just gets all mixed up. So I guess describe the differences. Probably not all the differences, but why aren't you just a medical marijuana company that people would see on the corner? What's the difference between what you guys do and what they do? I know they're vast, but pick a few things just to emphasize to investors that you're not the marijuana guy on the corner.
Yeah, so first of all, we're not in dispensaries. We're not in the United States because it's not federally legal in the United States. Obviously, we think that market's attractive and we intend to ultimately enter, but we provide standardized pharmaceutical forms of cannabinoid-based products that are today prescribed by physicians and then delivered to patients. That's what we do. And on the medical side, these are products that are not indication specific. So the physician has to make that judgment call in terms of, what product is dosed for what disease and how it's titrated. But on the pharmaceutical side, for example, with Trunerox, that's an approved drug by INVIMA, which is sort of the FDA of Colombia, that is for Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. So which means these products are produced under GMP, which means they're standardized, they're evidence-based in their prescription. When you buy a product from a dispensary, you're not getting the physician's support. You're getting a teenager, a bud tender telling you what to do. And we're strong advocates that medical and adult use should be separated. Somebody wants to buy joints from a dispensary for their weekend, by all means. but a mother should not have to walk into a dispensary to buy for their pediatric, epilepsy child the products like that. That's not the right format, right delivery, and the right hand holding. So that's the major difference. And because Canada is federally legal, some of the other markets that we work in, for example, Brazil is federally legal for medical and pharma purposes. We operate in those markets. United States, it's not. And I'm not going to be in a US dispensary when I'm applying for FDA level drugs in the future. So we have separated that. Unfortunately, we're misconstrued and put into this kind of pigeonhole of, oh, they're just a cannabis company. And that's certainly not the case. We're a pharmaceutical company that's using cannabinoids as active ingredients.
Yeah, so let's talk about that really quick. The U.S., the Biden administration, won't be political. This is just what happened, that they rescheduled marijuana. Does that have any impact? What is your outlook for the United States? I'm sure you're involved with the legal wranglings here in the United States and how this market is developing. What do you foresee in the future? How is the environment now, etc.?
So we're not as affected as you would imagine. I mean, because we're not a recreational company, we're not in dispensaries. I don't have banking issues. We don't have those limitations. We're just not in the US. And we can enter the US with current legislation as long as I have an FDA approved drug. So we're currently generating the data, the clinical packages. We're learning about our products so that we could apply to the FDA and do FDA level trials in the near future and get a drug approved. So if the legislation does not change, I can still enter the United States with an FDA approved drug when I can meet those standards, and that's kind of like the long term if nothing changes. But with the rescheduling of cannabis, I think what has happened is it's going to allow perhaps more opportunity for pharma companies, biotech and funds and investors to enter. And I think we're prime target for them to be collaborating with because we've actually done the work. We actually have the intellectual property. We have proof of concept. We're serving thousands of patients internationally. So if the legislation does allow medical cannabis, then we would look to enter with RHO or medical brand, with MyMedi, our medical platform. And again, we're not a dispensary company. We're working with insurance companies and hospitals and physicians. That pharmacological package, the pharmacoeconomic packages for insurance providers, the pharmacovigilance that is involved with taking care of patients and patient support, we've already established and are doing. So I think we'll be very well positioned to enter and work with medical companies that are looking to provide proper standard of care to patients using medical cannabis.
Yeah, and have you found insurance companies receptive to this? Doctors prescribing this and being able to be reimbursed with that? I know there had been a problem with that in the past. How is it at the current state?
So we kind of, picked that up from Shoppers Drug Mart because they were working with the largest insurance providers. And if I was a large insurance provider, I would understand why they chose Shoppers. So we are working with I think about 12 provincial payers. So like WSIB is a Work Safety Board of Ontario. If you get injured and medical cannabis is suitable for you, we're the preferred vendor. So we are working with large insurance providers, both public and private already here in Canada. And about 70%, I think roughly, of our revenue generated from MyMedi is actually insurance adjudicated, which is even better than reimbursed. So patients aren't actually paying out of pocket. We're billing the insurance providers. So it's already happening. It's already happening in, Trunerox approval in Colombia, that's insurance covered. So it's hard for people to differentiate between what we do in recreational companies, but I think that's a major differentiator is the majority of our revenue is covered by insurance because these are prescribed products. Are we seeing the medical community support? Absolutely. We've had since day one. We had a very successful symposium a couple of weeks ago here in Canada. We had the top hospitals, top key opinion leaders of the country attending and presenting. So we've been working very closely with them, and we do believe the medical community will continue to support if you can generate the evidence that they're asking for, if you can provide standardized products that they're asking for, and they're looking for the Avicannas of the world that are separated from the recreational side. What they don't want is recreational companies with low quality products for their patients without evidence.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So on the evidence side, to me, as you described it, I see two different kind of paths. There's the FDA path and the official approval path, and there's specific tests that they require to go through that. That's sometimes an onerous process, no doubt about that. But what is the testing on the other side for the non-FDA products? What kind of testing do those products go through to prove their effectiveness to medical people and consumers?
So that's a good question. So I think first of all, the FDA path requires clinical development and GMP manufacturing and full clinical development packages. And the exciting thing, what we're able to do is that we can actually generate that evidence internationally and then come into the US and FDA when we're ready. And we're doing that already. We've so far conducted about 19 preclinical and clinical trials. So we're already doing that. And once you have the substantial evidence, the US is obviously the most attractive market. So we will apply for there once we have those right packages. In terms of the medical cannabis side, in my opinion, you're still going to require some sort of GMP manufacturing. I would suggest having at least standardized products that at least have GMP manufacturing, but that's sort of the basics. But in a market like Canada, you don't even need that. You don't need GMP manufacturing. You actually work under good production practices, GPP. But then it's the testing. So making sure that heavy metals, residual solvent, microbiology, those type of basic standards of a product that should be going to a patient is covered. And in Canada, we do have that. Internationally, in a market like Brazil, they have that plus GMP. Europe, they have that plus GMP. So there is already more standards and quality that they would need to be able to adhere to that, which we already do. So I do believe ultimately that there's about probably 100 or so clinical indications that benefit from pharmaceutical cannabinoids, but that's going to take a long time. But in that interim period, I do believe that there's a medical cannabis opportunity as well.
Yeah, so just hearing you talk, there's obviously differences between the countries. How difficult and I guess expensive is it to navigate those for the company between U.S. obviously some of the tightest regulations and some then the loosest, and just how do you manage that as a company?
So we actually set higher quality standards for ourselves than most of these countries have today for cannabis. So because we take a more serious approach to cannabinoid-based medicine, we take the highest level of standards. So formulations that are stable, formulations that are designed to have an actual specific delivery target, release profile. For example, slow release for sleep, fast release for neuropathic pain, transdermal if you're trying to get a topical into the joints and muscles, local if you're trying to hit a dermatology indication. So for us, we believe the standards we've taken are sort of pharmaceutical standards. And while medical cannabis legislation and standards continue to evolve, we think that we're already above that in many countries. So that's why we've sort of become established leaders within that realm. And otherwise, it's quite difficult. Every country has very different regulations. And we have a very strong legal and regulatory department that continues to navigate that. And we've been able to export it to 20 countries. It tells you something about us, our understanding of how to navigate within these regulatory environments.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you mentioned at the beginning, but I just want to reiterate. So do you control the supply chain and the manufacturing and those kind of things that helps to promote the quality of the product?
Yeah, so we control, I would say, the two most important components of the value chain. One is the intellectual property. So the formulations, the drug delivery systems, the clinical efficacy and the data that comes with that, the education training that comes with that is all Avicanna owned. And then we own a very important part of the value chain, which is the upstream, which is actually the raw materials. So because this industry is new, the manufacturing of the CBD, THC, CBG that goes into these drugs is something that we control and we produce ourselves. So we don't have to rely on, recreational cannabis companies that you're buying these input materials from. So by controlling those two components, I would say the beginning and the end, we have a very good understanding of how to navigate these markets. And then based on the product, the geographic location, we then outsource manufacturing to contract manufacturers. And that allows us to both internationalize and also scale without having to do major CapEx on our own manufacturing.
Yep, definitely makes sense. So I want to get into the financials, and actually this leads into client questions because those have been the financials, which I kind of left for the end. So this will work out well. So I guess part of the client's question, then I'll get to the rest of it, is, so you mentioned that you had the positive EBITDA. the question is that a one-off, and how lumpy is revenue going to be?
So I don't believe it's going to be a one-off. I think if you look at the revenue over the last 2-3 quarters since our acquisition of Shoppers Drug Mart's medical cannabis division, it's been consistently within this sort of $6 million and up range. What we're demonstrating is sort of some consistency, but also growth. What we're also demonstrating is raising efficiency. So we were able to raise margins, increase margins, lower costs. So we've spent really the first 9 months or so of this business unit optimizing in Canada, and then we look forward to growing that. So I don't believe it'll be lofty. I think it's going to be something that's going to continue to grow. But in addition to that, I think this is just a proof of concept stage. So if we're generating, 30 million, 25, $30 million run rate this year, just based on Q1 revenues that has been obviously publicized, we are already looking to sort of double from last year. But this is the base in terms of what I think the company's capable of just through Canada. And Canada, again, because of the regulations, was really our proof of concept market. We wanted to demonstrate things work. We want to demonstrate that we're helping patients. We wanted to demonstrate that we can get the medical community on board, and we have.
Yeah, and I love this question because it's one I like to ask CEOs because it kind of tells you where the company is. They ask, what has you most excited about the next year or so, and why is that? Is it a specific product or business development? What has you getting up in the morning excited about what's to come over the next year, looking forward to?
I think that's a great question. I would say internationalization of what we've already accomplished in Canada. So the expanding this, going into more advanced clinical development, potentially co-development. I think these things are super exciting because we've had such good signals, both from anecdotal level in terms of patient success, but also from our observational clinical trials. So going into these sort of more advanced clinical trials that I think will demonstrate the potential of this company from a pharmaceutical perspective. The patents, so the intellectual property, we announced a major patent that was awarded by the U.S. Patent Office yesterday. So that stuff is super exciting. And then the entrance of strategic partnerships. So we're seeing major pharma companies and CPG companies, wellness companies are entering the space. They're looking around, and then in many ways they're collaborating with us. So we've announced some of those partnerships in early stage. They're not named yet, but I think as those pharma companies and those partnerships mature, the audience will see the real opportunity there. So I'm very excited about, I would say, big picture pharma and the internationalization of what we've already accomplished.
Yeah, and I think looking at your company and listening to you, I think you described it earlier that this is an inflection point where the proof of concept has been done, and now it's ramping up and moving into other markets and moving into that phase, which is a great phase to be in. So we're almost out of time. We could talk about this for another hour and a half. I'm sure we could, but I don't want to waste anybody else's time. So I'm going to let you have about 60 seconds here to just leave investors with whatever thoughts you want.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, thanks for joining. And Brad, thanks for participating in this. I think we're in this incredibly exciting period. I'm a founding CEO. I've been in this company for 9 years. We've really built what is a real science-based, evidence-based cannabinoid product company that is going to now internationalize a successful proof of concept in Canada. As we already mentioned, I do believe that we're well positioned to be leaders within the global market opportunity. And I think now there's evidence and there's proof that, there's many clinical indications that are benefiting from cannabinoid-based products, specifically epilepsy, sleep, pain. Those are massive market opportunities. And someone needs to take it very seriously, and that's what we've done. And now, of course, we're in Canada because of the regulations, but we look at the U.S. opportunity in terms of commercialization, but also we look at the U.S. opportunity in terms of capital markets. We believe that the company's not really, has earned the value it deserves from a share price perspective. So we're starting to do more investor relations, getting out there, presenting. That's why I'm here today. But over the last couple of years, we've been head down, executing and demonstrating the proof of concept. And now it's really time to get out there, both reap the benefits of what we've developed from a commercial perspective, but also tell the story and set the stage for ultimately getting onto a senior exchange into the United States.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up, and I agree with all those. Looking at your company, I'm very excited about it. Wish I was covering it, but I want to thank all the investors that have tuned into this. Thank you for your time, and if you have more questions, please feel free. There's an opportunity at the end of the after the seminar ends to ask questions to the company, and they'll get back to you and to schedule meetings if you want to. And I can tell you, they're great guys, and they are very happy to tell their story and explain what's going on and why it's so exciting. So again, thank you, everyone.